All right, so what we have here is the light-dependent reactions Doodle notes that I want you to kind of follow along. Now, I went ahead and did this in color, but color as needed for everything to kind of help you kind of feel confident about all of this. All right, so when looking at this is a little bit different than what we talked about in class, because when we looked at this last time, we only looked at these players right here, photosystem 1, 2, and electron transport chain. But when we actually look at it as a whole, remember this is integrated within the membrane of the thylakoid. So let's go ahead and put down where everything is. So what we're looking at here is going to be the thylakoid interior. And this would be obviously the thylakoid membrane. And this is going to be our stroma. All right. So kind of figure out where you're kind of orientated within the actual chloroplast itself. But let's go ahead and let's label our players with everything before we start going through the steps. So starting from left to right here, obviously this is going to be my sunlight here. This is going to be my photosystem 2. Here we have the electron transport chain. Here we have photosystem 1. And here we have our ATP synthase. All right. So far we have all of our players involved with this. So our plan of attack is we're going to go through this step by step with one another, and hopefully it'll kind of make sense of what the overall goal is. And the overall goal here with the light-dependent reaction is, well, to break down that water to create O2 and to create these high-powered molecules, all right? So one of the things that either photosynthesis or cellular respiration uses are these electron/energy carriers. And so for photosynthesis specifically, it uses a molecule called NADH, okay? And this is the part in which it gains the electron. We call this fully charged. Now, this molecule, kind of like ATP, but not really. It's like ATP that it is a collection of energy, but instead of your cell using this NADH, what it's going to do is it's going to go into the light-independent cycle or go to the Calvin cycle to be used, all right? So really, when we talk about photosynthesis, it makes two things. NADHs, it also makes ATP as well. And you're like, hold on, record scratch. Mr. McFarland, you just told me that photosynthesis doesn't make ATP. It does, it only makes a very small amount. And all goes into the Calvin cycle. So overall, yes, 2 ATP is made, but in the overall general reaction, the net amount is 0 because in the process as it uses that ATP. So most of the ATP that we're using is all coming from cell respiration. So let's go ahead and let's start at our first player here, and that's going to be photosystem 2. So if you take a look at photosystem 2, you're going to see it's an enzyme, but it has these chlorophylls packed within it. Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B. So light is absorbed by the chlorophyll molecules, and remember there's A and B, keratin and xanthophyll. But for our purposes, it's going to start with chlorophyll molecules in our photosystem 2. Okay, so we're starting at photosystem 2. And what this does is that when this light, I'm going to kind of draw the light here, when this light goes and hits those chlorophylls, that light energy bounces through. And what it ends up doing is that it excites electrons. In fact, it excites 2 of them, okay? And when electrons get to an excited state, it gets the energy and releases it. And so this right here is the part in which we convert sunlight energy into chemical energy. And so delocalizing them, the electrons, they can move down the electron transport chain. Now, one thing else happens at PS2 or photosystem 2, okay? Those electrons, once they get excited, they start traveling down the electron transport chain. So these electrons are empty. And so to be able to restart this reaction, we have to replace those electrons. And that is where our water in our equation comes in at. This water breaks down to 2 hydrogen ions and 2 oxygen. What? Say what? That is our product. That's one of our products. So like we said, the light-dependent reaction, that's going to produce the products of oxygen. Now that hydrogens are not going to go to waste. As you can see, these hydrogens are building up within the thylakoid interior. That's going to be important here in just a bit. Okay? All right. So we've already made our oxygen. So what else do we need to do here? All right. Well, we first have to make those high energy input molecules. So let's keep with the electrons. So far we just got excited by that by that sunlight, and so now we're going to go down this electron transport chain. So as the excited electrons move along the ETC, they lose energy. Okay? And some of this is used to pump hydrogen ions from the stroma to the thylakoid space. This creates an electrochemical gradient. All right. So let's take a look at this right here, okay? And again, you can pause this whenever you need to, okay? But let's take a look at the electron transport chain. So as my electrons are traveling down the chain, what this is doing is that it is causing my electrons to go from my hydrogen electrons to go from an area of low concentration to that of an area of high concentration. So we're going from low to high, and so we know that this is going to be a type of active transport. And you might be saying, well, Mr. McFarland, if it's active transport, that means it's using the energy. Where is it getting the energy? It's getting the energy from the electrons. That's why it says that they lose energy, because as they go down this electron transport chain, it's using the energy of those electrons to pull those hydrogens against the concentration gradient into the thylakoid space. So we end up making a high concentrated amount of hydrogen within this particular space, okay? And so the main goal of the ETC is literally to create an electrochemical gradient of hydrogen ions. Okay, so, all right, we've collected a bunch of hydrogens. Now what? Well, now we get to PS1, all right, photosystem 1. Now those electrons then get sent to the bottom of PS1, okay? Now they still have a little bit of charge to them, but they need the extra little oomph of energy to make it fully charged. And so this, our PS2 has that chlorophyll at that higher wavelength, and so that light comes in, and that's going to excite those electrons again to that higher energy state. And when they're at that high energy state, they are able to be, that energy is able to be passed. So the de-energized electrons that are passed onto the photosystem 1 chlorophyll molecules in PS1 absorb light and re-energize the electrons. Okay, so again, remember, these are electrons coming from the original PS2. They are passed on to an electron we call an acceptor, a molecule called NADP plus, okay? And that's what this is right here, NADP plus. And you're like, what's NADP, Mr. McFarland, all right? That's that electron transport carrier, okay? So this NADPH, when it's empty of electrons, we say it's NADP plus. When it gains that electron, that's where it forms the NADPH, okay? So it accepts them along with a hydrogen ion to become NADPH. We say it has been reduced because, again, it's gaining that electron. So it's going to gain that negative charge. So that's going to reduce the charge overall. All right. So we made a crap ton of these NADPHs, but we still have a whole stash of these hydrogen ions, all right? So this is where we're going to be making our small amounts of ATP, and this is going to be done from ADP, adenosine diphosphate, plus the phosphate makes ATP. So hydrogen ions diffuse from the, should say from high to low concentration. So take a look here. Here's our thylakoid spaces. These hydrogens are going to be naturally diffusing down from high concentration to that of low concentration. And when it does that, it gives the energy needed to make that ATP. The movement of hydrogen ions provides the energy to create ATP. And we're going to see this again when we get into cell respiration, this concentration gradient, this electrochemical gradient. And that's only half of this photosystem process. Now let's go back to this water here. So the lost electrons, we went from all the way from here all the way back to over here. And so we got to recharge this thing. So the lost electrons must be replaced in PS2. This comes from splitting a water molecule, and it splits into 2 hydrogen ions and 2 oxygen. Now, whoops. 2 hydrogen ions. Now that should not say oxygens, my bad. It should say 2 electrons and 1 oxygen atom. The oxygen is a waste product and is released into the air through what? Through what? Through the stomata. All right. I hope this helps you with the light-dependent reaction. Watch a few YouTube videos, get it under your belt, and let me know what questions you might have for this, all right? Thank you.